Good morning and welcome to Church at Home with Rachael for Monday, the 23rd of August. This morning I'd like to talk a little bit about what is community and what does a parish look like, especially for us Anglicans. I have had different parishes over the years and different understandings of what a parish might be. When I got to Halifax and Nova Scotia and PEI, that diocese, they had a more traditional understanding of what a parish was, and they kept it very Anglican. I noticed that the sort of standing orders for at least the clergy I worked with were that you wouldn't step outside your parish boundaries for something. Like if a person from another congregation called you up and said, could you do something? You would refer them back to their parish priest. But they were very clear that those parish boundaries were Anglican parish boundaries. And I kind of took it on the chin a couple times when I would have somebody call me up and ask for a baptism or a wedding or a funeral, and they weren't necessarily Anglican, or they were from a different area where they'd already spoken to a priest and didn't feel that they'd been listened to. As an Anglican priest, I understand that, and it's very British, this idea that what we do is we take care of the people who are within our geographical boundaries. So from this area to this area. So in the city, maybe in this neighborhood or these streets, between these streets. And I understand that. I get that. And it's very British, like as I said, the very English model, where there was a parish church for things and then everybody in their parish would go there. But what happens when someone goes to the priest in their parish and they find that they're rebuffed or they're turned away because they're not regularly attending parishioners, or they haven't been able to, or they haven't expressed interest before about this? That becomes a bit of a problem, because we can go by the letter of the law that says, well, they talk to their parish priest. If their parish priest is determined that they're not ready or they're not committed enough to participate in that parish, hence get whatever it is they're asking for. Okay, but what happens when they walk away? What's the taste in their mouth about the church? Are they likely to come back? And at the end of the day, this is where sort of it used to bother me, and I would sort of be that catch-all priest, because I seldom would turn people away and say no, is that it's not really about being Anglican to me. Anglican is it's like the shirt I wear to express my allegiances. It's like, okay, for sports. Yesterday I talked about audibles in my sermon. For sports, if you are an Edmonton Elks fan and you're a football fan, you're going to wear an Edmonton Elks jersey or a Calgary Stampeders jersey. When someone sees you wearing a football jersey, they make that assumption that you're a football fan. That, if you went out and spent the money on a jersey and you're wearing it out in public, you must be a fan of football. Then specifically, you must then be a fan of that particular club, football club. The Edmonton Elks, or the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, or the Calgary Stampeders, or the Ottawa Red Blacks. That makes sense. I get that. And in my way of thinking, that's sort of like what Anglican is. If people look at me and see, the crest I wear on my sweatshirt says that I am the Anglican priest from the wee parish of St. Thomas Wainwright and St. Mary's Edgerton, that tells them that I am the Anglican priest. I belong to that Anglican community. But it also tells them I'm Christian, because I was wearing that particular brand. I'm Anglican. But I think the Anglican thing isn't as important as the Christian thing. If I am an Anglican, I must first of all be a Christian. The clothing that I hang on my Christianity doesn't change the essence of who I am. The essence of who I am is Christianity. The way I live out the essence of who I am is the Anglican part. And so my sense is, when someone comes to me, regardless of whether or not they're connected to the Anglican tradition, it seems to me that I am called to meet them as Christian, acknowledging that I'm coming at it from an Anglican perspective. But I'm not going to turn them away, because somewhere in there, somehow, the Spirit, for whatever reasons, in whatever ways, has spurred them on to seek out a priest. And in this day and age, that's a pretty amazing thing. So right up front, I don't say no to people. There might be things we talk about and logistically, or they may make the decision where I'm not going to pursue this. But my first answer is never no, at least seldom that I can remember. And I think that's something that we as Christians, as Anglican Christians, need to reclaim. We need to acknowledge our parish boundaries, but not that our boundaries would be exclusive, meaning I will only speak to you if you are Anglican in my parish and you belong to my parish church. But rather, looking at our boundaries and saying, okay, I'm Anglican and I serve the Anglicans, obviously, but I'm also Christian, and how might I serve all the Christians? And if they happen to want to get closer and understand more, if they're learning from me, they're going to learn from the Anglican perspective. I had an experience this past week, where I was out at Points West Living and then Battle River Lodge, some retirement homes in our community, where I met some people who are indeed Anglican, but they seem to be feeling a little bit adrift because their small communities that they come from, not Wainwright or Edgerton, those Anglican churches had closed. And with the closing of those churches, they were left with not having an Anglican way to worship. Now, in some cases, those folks joined the United Church, the Presbyterian, or the Lutheran Church, and they were able to continue worshiping as Christians, as Anglicans hanging out with Christians of another kind of sweatshirt, of another kind of team jersey, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But for some things in life, and now that they're in Wainwright, where there are other churches and there are opportunities, they seem to be feeling a little bit sort of like, well, where do I belong? Because my Anglican priest, my Anglican church no longer exists, so what do I do? And that got me thinking about the fact that I am the only active Anglican priest in the municipal district of Wainwright, in the MD of Wainwright. I happen to be specifically active in Wainwright at St. Thomas and at St. Mary's in Edgerton. But what about the people from Irma or other outlying areas, or those folks who live in the country who don't have a specific church that they call home? That doesn't mean that they can't have a priest, or at least it shouldn't mean that. So my question is, how do we, as Christians who happen to be Anglicans, and those of us who happen to also then be ministers or priests, how do we reach out to those folks who fall outside of our geographical boundary? I think maybe that my parish, the wee parish, Wainwright and Edgerton, needs to begin doing a little bit of work about expanding our thoughts on what it means to be Anglicans in the MD of Wainwright. How can we reach out and advertise and allow other Anglicans within that parish boundary, the boundary of the MD of Wainwright, how can we help them to know that we are here for them? That I am here for them if they need a funeral or a pastoral emergency, or if they have a baptism or a wedding, if they just need to talk, if they need worship. Maybe we could have a worship service in Irma once a year somewhere, or take the show on the road once in a while and do something special. I don't know. These are all thoughts I'm still thinking and praying about. But maybe as a diocese we could do that as well. Recognizing, or the Anglican Church of Canada, recognizing that as more and more churches, small towns, village churches are closing, that not only do we have to very carefully close those churches, but we still have a responsibility to all of those who call themselves Anglican within those communities, who no longer have a place to turn to easily. Indeed, for all of those people who are Christian, who seem to have no place to turn to. So I think some work needs to be done on looking at who we are as parishes, and what does that mean to be a Christian who wears a team jersey that says Anglican Church of Canada. Share with me your thoughts. I'd love to hear them. Have a great day. God bless you, and I will see you again on Tuesday for Church at Home with Rachael.